Dodgers lost. It took over 3 hours, and the starting pitching has had a bad time through the rotation. Does it mean much? Mookie Betts was in the booth, though, and that was fun. So we're going to talk about all that. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everyday, all you have to do is listen or watch every day, which can be made easier by subscribing and being notified when episodes are live or when we're going live on YouTube like we are tonight. If this is your first time listening or watching, you could have picked a better game to come on after, but we still appreciate you. My name is Vince Samperio, joined by my co-host Jeff Snyder. Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans that have covered the team for a decade now in various capacities, writing about the Dodgers, talking about the Dodgers, being in the press box, being in the locker room, all that fun stuff. And we're here to bring you what we believe is smart and rational and hopefully thoughtful takes about the Dodgers, making you and us better Dodger fans in the process. And this is one of those games that in the long grand scheme of things, probably doesn't affect the 2024 season at all. But in the short term, it's one of those that, makes you question, maybe not being a Dodger fan, but it's just like, that wasn't fun.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't the funnest game to watch. It's I'll still take a bad baseball game over most other things, but yeah, definitely not the most enjoyable game we've had. Not as enjoyable as last night's game, for example. And all in all, it was kind of a perfect storm of, the offense got our hopes up and then just fell asleep. The pitching was bad all around. Everybody who pitched poorly to some degree or another, except I guess maybe Anthony Banda. And yeah, it was just an ugly, dumb game, against the team that eliminated us last year. That probably plays into a little bit. It's just one of those games that you'd like to just forget. And, hopefully it's leading to an angry win tomorrow.
Yeah, the biggest thing, obviously, the offense jumping out in that first inning, you're like, okay, we're finally treating a guy making his major league debut like sometimes Dodgers pitchers making their major league debut get treated, which is not well. But then, he settled in a little bit and Dodgers didn't score again the rest of the game. But obviously, pitching has been a big story over the last week or so, specifically over this last time through the rotation, as it's been bad. Bobby Miller, 5 innings, 2-3 runs, whatever it was yesterday, was the highlight of this turn through the rotation. And this time it was Gavin Stone's time to struggle, and coming off a complete game shutout, maybe the extra days off didn't help him, whatever it was, but he just wasn't as sharp as he has been. And, got one of those starts that sometimes pitchers have, and hopefully it doesn't carry over.
Yeah. And people are quick to jump to explanations. I caught the postcast with Pete, and it's a common thing that people jump to. Oh, they're just trying to hit home runs. Just put the ball in play. Look what the DBacks do. They just put the ball in play and good things happen. Dodgers only struck out 5 times tonight. Like, it wasn't a case of they're swinging for the fences. It was just the fact that a baseball season's long and it was a bad game. And yeah, I mean, the fact is right now, some of the players on the Dodgers, let me tell you about a TV show, Vince, from back when you were just a child, called Lost. Did you ever watch Lost?
I
watched Lost at the time when it was on. These days with binging TV shows, you can get through it, but I watched it literally, recording every episode on my DVR every week, watching it week to week. And in season 3 of Lost, there were several times during that season when I thought, this show has sucked the last 3 weeks. If something doesn't happen next week that catches my interest, I'm going to quit. And then they'd have a good episode. And it just kept going like that. And the problem was, they knew how they wanted the show to end, but it was making so much money. It was such a popular show. They didn't want to rush to the ending. And so we had a full season where nothing happened towards the actual storyline. And it wasn't until they announced, okay, we are only doing this many seasons. We know exactly when the show is ending. Then they were able to map out the storyline to work towards that ending. And so at that point, every episode had a purpose. I thought about that because almost everybody at the bottom of the Dodgers lineup is like season 3 of Lost for me. Jason Hayward, like I am so done with Jason Hayward, and then he'll have a good game, and Kike Hernandez, I'll be like, I'm done with Kike, and then he has a good game. But the problem is, it still wasn't a good season. Season 3 of Lost still sucked. And the end game is going to be the trade deadline here. The Dodgers are going to, BC has been talking in the chat about the bottom of the order and their stats and stuff and how that's going to struggle in October. The guys in the bottom of the order right now for the Dodgers aren't going to be the bottom of the order in October. If so, yeah, then that'll be reason for concern. But what we're building up to is the trade deadline. And like for me, this whole game was just a thought of, okay, here is a lot more information on what the Dodgers need to do in the next few weeks at the trade deadline.
Yeah, it's exactly. If there's guys, and we've talked about it before, and some of the time these guys might be batting there in October, and as I've said multiple times, it's either because something went really good or something went really bad. For the most part, over the last couple of seasons, it's been because things that went bad, and we end up with people in the lineup or people getting big at bats in October that shouldn't be taking big at bats in October. Even sometimes coming off of good trade deadlines, the last 2 years maybe a little bit underwhelming compared to deadlines of the past. So this is one of those games where the regular season is chugging along. It's July. You're going to lose games like this. I don't think it's, there's nothing to put stock into right now. If Gavin Stone starts a string of bad starts, then yes, there's some stock to put into it. If, the rest of the relievers and every time someone comes in, they're allowing runs, if that happens over the course of 2-3 weeks, then yeah, there's some concern in it. And I do think that what we talked about earlier in the season was every kind of side helping each other out. The offense helping out the starting pitching helping out the relievers helping out the offense. And right now it's a little disjointed. There was the starting pitching this last time through has not been good. And then in turn, that has made the relievers throw a little bit more, and maybe different relievers that don't want to see at different points of games have to throw a little bit more. And the offense has done okay through it all. But again, it was not easy. And they're not like, breaking through and scoring 6-7 runs a game. They're doing what they need to do, and they've won a few games and things of that. So it's just, a rough stretch, and it's not, it's not maybe as fun to watch the Dodgers right now as they are when they're on a hot stretch. But regardless, I don't think there's anything right now, and I'm going to continue to say it, that's preparing me for October doom and gloom. Right now, it's just like, they lost on July 3rd in a bad game, and everyone pitched bad, and the offense didn't do anything after the first inning.
Yeah, absolutely. Maddie jokes I assume he's joking in the chat session that we have no idea how to do a therapy session. Yeah, my therapy session will be, it's July. It's, and it's not even the part of July that comes after the trade deadline, which is July 31st. Trade deadline is July 30th this year. So, that I won't ever do a therapy session episode in early July, I don't think, because baseball season's long. I was telling Vince before we started recording, I feel like the more people are into other sports, the more maybe it taints their view of baseball. Because like if you're an NFL team and a fan of an NFL team and your team loses to a worse team, yeah, that's legitimately frustrating because there's only 16 games. If you're an NBA team and your team loses to a worse team, it's very frustrating because you've got the same 5 guys out on the floor. If you're better than them, you ought to win. The nature of baseball is if you play a worse team 13 times in a season, like the Dodgers will with the DBacks or whoever, you're going to lose 3 to 6 of those games, and it doesn't really mean that much. And so every loss counts as one. And in this game, because of how the starting pitching has been bad lately, the bullpen's been overworked. They had to stick with Stone a little bit longer than maybe they might have in a more important game. They had to stick with Yarbrough, bring in Yarbrough in a situation where maybe they wouldn't have liked to, and just kind of go with, okay, they made a decision. we're not going to use our high leverage guys because this isn't a game to use your high leverage relievers. And so a game that maybe they could have kept it and only lost 6-4, instead they lost 12-4. But in the end, a loss is a loss, and their high leverage guys didn't pitch, so they have a decent chance of winning tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's realistically how it goes. One comment here saying it doesn't mean much. These guys beat them in the playoffs last year, and they were better against them last year in the regular season. So all in all, regular season is fun to enjoy in the moment, but it has no bearing really. If it's, September and Chris Taylor's hitting under 200 and still batting, and Gavin Lux has an OPS under 600 and still starting, then yeah, there's concern for the next month. But in July, you're hoping that those guys won't be in the lineup or will be improved to the fact or up until the point where they should be in the lineup. And maybe that's what happens.
Yeah. And my preferred method of being a Dodger fan is to enjoy the regular season and be optimistic in the regular season. People gave me a hard time last night because I predicted a walk-off, and you're more optimistic than me. Well, yeah, it's more fun for me when I watch a game with optimism. That's why this game wasn't as fun, because once you go down 12-4, it's hard to be very optimistic. So it's just, okay, well, hope the game gets over quickly so that we can do the podcast sooner. And then I can, watch the episode of Justified or whatever. But you know what? Baseball is more fun for me when I'm optimistic.
Yeah, well, other than the bottom of the first inning, the other highlight of the game was Mookie Betts in the booth. We also got some Mookie Betts comments from him and from Dave Roberts. So we'll talk about that. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Ibotta. 4th of July is here, and there's probably some things you'll buy that you should have bought a long time ago. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for you and the kids, maybe some drinks. But what do these all have in common? You're probably buying them not just for 4th of July, but throughout the entire summer. But you don't got to stress about the cost, because you can use Ibotta and get cash back on all your purchases when you stock up on all your summer essentials. It's summertime, which also means it's barbecue season. Get those grilling favorites and earn a cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta. There's no reason not to get out there and continue to spend the way you're spending, but also using Ibotta to help you out, because Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop, earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. It's time you joined over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. And right now, Ibotta is offering listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. So go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. You can tell your friends, tell your family, tell any Dodger fans in your life that there's a podcast for them for about 30 minutes every Monday through Friday. You can also go beyond the podcast, become a Locked On Dodgers insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can text directly with us, get any news updates, rumors as they start trickling in here now that we're in July, and you get to send directly to your phone. You don't have to worry about being on social media all day, because we'll cover that for you. All right, Jeff. We got some Mookie Betts FaceTime in a few different ways. He was out on the field, not really working out, just kind of going through the motions. He talked to reporters before the game. Dave Roberts was asked about Mookie Betts, but first we'll talk about him. He spent the first few innings of the game in the booth with Joe and Eric Karras. I was going to say Eric Karras, like Vince Scully used to say. And after I think he was a little bit either nervous or didn't want to be a jinx in the top of the first. He was a little quiet. Then after that, he really opened up, and it was, some people might not like the three-man booth, or when, they're kind of focusing on Mookie Betts in the moment. But I think it was really great. And as someone who likes Mookie Betts, it was cool to kind of see him in that environment.
Yeah, for sure. I was watching on the MLB app on my Apple TV, and before the game started, I don't know if you got this, but like it was during the commercial break, they popped up and it's just showing the view of Dodger Stadium, and you could hear conversation in the booth, and like a hot mic, basically. They didn't know they were live. And I could hear Karos talking to somebody. I'm like, I think that's Mookie Betts' voice. And then he was talking about, Mookie said, can I get a pencil so I can keep score? And I'm like, that sounds like Mookie's actually going to be in the booth for a while. I was really excited. So then it came back and they showed it was him. Yeah, so he spent the first 6 hours or so of the game in the booth, left in the fifth inning, something. But so it was a long time. But yeah, there was a lot of really good stuff there. And they mentioned he's comfortable on the mic because his podcast, he's a personable guy anyway. And Mookie's just a guy who's very comfortable in his own skin, which is nice. It actually reminded me, and let me finish the sentence before you get too mad at me. It reminded me of when A-Rod first became a broadcaster, because the first postseason that A-Rod did, he was actually really, really good, because it was just like, I'm talking about baseball. I know a ton about baseball and I'm a smart guy. I can talk about this. And then A-Rod, unfortunately, got into, I want to be serious broadcaster, man. And I want to spout cliches like a serious broadcaster. But when A-Rod first started and was actually just sharing his baseball knowledge, it was awesome. And that's kind of what I thought of with Mookie, because it's just like, yeah, I know about this stuff. And, it was really, really cool to get his insights on guys he knows really well, on what's going on in the game. He and Karis talking about hitting, just really, really enjoyable, I thought.
Yeah, I thought I missed that first part that you mentioned with the hot mic part, but I did see him keeping score in the booth, and I was like, well, that's pretty cool. Like, and then I started wondering, like, I wonder how many players know how to keep score. But that's a different point for another day. But yeah, it was good to see him. Like I said, it took him up maybe half an inning to warm up. I think all those home runs in that bottom of the first helped out a little bit. And I think for me, and what I've seen with Mookie is that he is like humble, and he's not very he's very confident in himself, but he's not projecting it out there. And Karos had to throw a couple jabs at him a couple of times, kind of mentioning that. And like, Mookie, you're not such a bad hitter yourself. Or Mookie, the way he was talking about, with the way Freddie and Teo just kind of stick to their routine and everything else when they're hitting, and Mookie's always tinkering and everything else. And maybe he's like, maybe I need to go do what they're doing. And then Karos like, well, you're not doing so bad yourself the way you've been going anyways. But yeah, it was just, I think the other part too that stood out was him talking about Miguel Rojas and learning shortstop. And Mookie has been very candid about how hard shortstop has been, and he continued to kind of mention that, and kind of what Rojas has taught him, and the different ways. I mentioned everyone has different styles of shortstop. If there's guys that field it in front of them. There's guys like Corey Seager that maybe backhand a little bit more than others. There's guys that field it a little bit differently. He talked about funneling, different things. And, that's all stuff that we don't get a lot of the times, especially from the star player in the season, because they're usually on the field. And, yeah, it was fun to kind of, just have them in there and, hear from Mookie and know that, he's still, I mean, he's paying attention. He knew what Ketel Marte did in yesterday's game when he hit the ball 113 miles an hour. Like, even if he's not on the field, he's still paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that talk, it did kind of underscore the fact that Mookie is a somewhat unique baseball player because he is tiny. And so the things that, the things aren't as easy for him, especially on the hitting side, because it's not natural for a guy his size to hit the ball hard. Freddie Freeman is a giant. He's, not quite Aaron Judge size, but not much. If you put him between Aaron Judge and Mookie Betts, you'd say, well, Freddie looks a lot more like Aaron Judge than like Mookie Betts. And, Mookie is, closer to Jose Altuve or Alex Bregman size. And that's the shot at Alex Bregman. And so, yeah, I thought that was interesting because I think he recognizes that he does have to go about things a little bit differently and has a different work process. I thought it was interesting just him talking about, they didn't ask him specifically, do you expect to be the shortstop when you come back? But Dave Roberts was asked about that on our buddy Clint, who filled in for you on this while you were in Hawaii one night with me. He does a show with Alana Rizzo, and they had Dave Roberts on, and they asked Dave Roberts, is Mookie going to be the shortstop, and is he going to bat leadoff? And, Dave Roberts didn't give a complete answer, didn't actually answer either question, but I thought his answer about the leadoff part was pretty interesting because he said he's not sure yet where Mookie will bat in the lineup, but he did say that he has come around to liking having Shohei and Freddie split up in the lineup, and he's going to continue to do that. And so, really, that most likely means that Mookie's going to be batting second and Shohei's going to stay at leadoff, because the alternative would be bumping either Freddie or Shohei down to fourth in the lineup. And yeah, cleanup, when we were kids, that was the most important spot in the lineup. These days, we understand you want your best hitters getting the most at bats. And so, realistically, Shohei, Mookie, and Freddie need to be 1, 2, 3 in some order. And the only way to have the two lefties split up with having those three at the top of the order is by having Shohei at leadoff and, well, having Mookie batting second. And it would make sense to stick with Shohei at leadoff and Freddie at third.
Yeah, and then they asked Mookie about, kind of the same two questions in regards to when he returns. And, he gave the Mookie Betts answer that we've seen since he's been here, whatever it helps to. Even though we've heard Mookie likes leadoff, he said he'll hit wherever, Shohei, basically giving all the praise to Shohei, and Shohei gets to hit wherever he wants. Mookie will slot in wherever the team needs them, and basically the same thing on defense. He said, shortstop, second base, right field, whatever the team needs when he returns is kind of where he'll play. And, I do think while he'll voice any opinion that he has that, could speak out against what he said in front of the press, I do think that he is going to settle in and be wherever they like. If Ohtani keeps up with an OPS, hovering around 1,000 in the leadoff spot, not that he wasn't that good in the number 2 hole, but when Mookie comes back, it's kind of hard to not sell him to, let's just leave Shohei where he's at.
Yeah, and Mookie did say that it's scary to be on first base with Shohei up to bat. So that's easy. Bat after him. You know what? So yeah, I do think it makes the most sense. And I think, I think it's been funny in an annoying sort of way how many people have jumped straight to criticizing Mookie whenever talking about who's going to bat leadoff when Mookie comes back, jumping straight to, well, Mookie insists on being leadoff guy because he's selfish. No, Mookie has said he prefers batting leadoff, and it's worked out great for them. But now that there is a reason for him not to bat leadoff, Mookie wants to win. There's no doubt in my mind. I am 1,000% positive that Mookie will be just fine batting second if that's what's best for the team.
Yeah. And I mean, him batting leadoff, most leadoff home runs ever. Now, when he comes back, if he's number 2, I don't think it's going to change anything in his mind. So,
yeah.
All right. There was only one all-star starter for the Dodgers. One of that is probably due to injury, realistically, but the other one was, maybe Dodger fans aren't out there voting, or people are voting, or is it a conspiracy against the Dodgers? We'll talk about all that. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode of Locked On Dodgers is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities. And the Dodgers don't have many games left in the rival city towns just because they've already played a lot of these teams. But there's a lot of different places to go this summer to watch the Dodgers play. So why don't you go check out, anywhere they're going to play in the second half of the season, even as close as Anaheim. Or maybe you're not from Los Angeles. I know we have a lot of insiders that aren't from Los Angeles. Maybe you want to come to Los Angeles. That's where Booking.com can help you out. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city or in your favorite team city. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com or on the site or in the Booking.com app. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. If you're looking for tickets this summer, not just baseball, there's concerts, there's theater, there's tons of other events going on. Game Time is here to help you out. But if you are looking for baseball tickets, Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. There's a handful of bobbleheads in the month of July. Maybe you're trying to go to one of those games. Jason Hayward on Saturday in the City Connect uniform. You got Kike later in July doing the celebration they do after hitting doubles. You got a Shohei Ohtani hat in July. There's a lot of different things. So go check out the Game Time app and look at which game you're trying to go to and see what deals they have. or you can just wait and get the last minute tickets, flash deals, or zone deals as we get closer to the event, because you can check them out all on the Game Time app. And remember, they have the lowest price guarantee, which means if you find tickets in your section or row cheaper than you did on Game Time, they'll credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you are one, make sure to check us out wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to spread the word to your friends, family, and any Dodger fans in your life. And, make sure to continue checking us out here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're already on YouTube, you can check out Locked On Sports Today or Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network. The Locked On Dodgers Postcast with host Pete Fox is there for you on the Locked On Sports Los Angeles YouTube channel after most Dodger games and are on our audio feed. All right, Jeff. The Dodgers have one all-star starter from the fan voting. That's Shohei Ohtani at DH. Mookie Betts was edged out at shortstop by Trey Turner, 51 to 49%. And then Teoscar Hernandez missed getting voted in as a starter by a few thousand votes. Is it a push from other teams? Is it not too much of a push from the Dodgers? Is it anti-Dodgers rhetoric? Mookie Betts is probably a little bit tough. If he was healthy, I got to imagine he would have been the starter regardless. Teoscar is good. You can argue that he's not as much of a household name, but Jurickson Profar was also an all-star starter, and he's not much of a big name either. So maybe it's just other fan bases are getting out there and voting.
Yeah, I think a lot of it in the outfield, at least specifically to Teoscar Hernandez, was it's just kind of a weak crop. You got Tatis got in on name recognition, but the other finalists, it's like Brandon Marsh and Nick Castellanos, and it's like I don't know. It's just there's not those big stars. And what I wish I had done when I was voting, that I didn't realize was an option until it was too late, is I didn't realize you didn't have to vote for 3 outfielders. And so what I would have done, and I'm sure that teams probably are discouraged from encouraging their fans to do this, but I think if every Dodger fan who voted for Teoscar Hernandez had only voted for Teoscar Hernandez and not put in 2 other guys, I think he probably would have won a spot. But the problem is when you got 5 other guys, 2 of them are Fernando Tatis and Jurickson Profar, Dodger fans probably aren't going to vote for them, which means that you end up with, it was Brandon Marsh and Nick Castellanos and whoever the other finalist was. You're picking 2 out of those 3, and it ends up with, like, it's just way too much clumped together. These guys all with about the same number of votes. I think it's probably some of that. The Dodgers are definitely a hated team after this last offseason in general. So I think if you aren't a Dodger fan, you're probably not, just like most Dodger fans, even though Yordan Alvarez wasn't on the Astros when the Astros cheated, I think a lot of Dodger fans didn't vote for Yordan Alvarez, even though he deserved it, because he's an Astro. I think that just happens, and I think it happens a lot with the Dodgers. So, they'll probably get a lot of subs, backup players on the roster, but only the one starter.
Yeah, Teoscar is probably going to end up starting because Tatis is not going to be able to play. Realistically, it doesn't bother me too much. It would have been Shohei and Mookie if Mookie wasn't hurt. Teoscar was right there on the cusp. And, Will Smith had a bad stretch, right before All-Star voting, and that didn't help out. And, William Contreras is more than deserving to be the All-Star starter there. So, yeah, they're going to get, Will Smith probably gets in maybe, and then Teoscar will get in. They'll get at least one pitcher in, Glasnow for sure. Maybe, Stone could have helped himself out a little bit more, but, we'll see what happens. But, for the Dodgers and, I guess for maybe some fans, they just would prefer if, Dodgers get rest during the All-Star break instead of going out there and competing. So
I'm a little bit bummed about Mookie Betts just because he probably won't be named to the team. Uh, I don't think they'll name a hurt guy and then immediately replace him, even though, although it is, I mean, because it is player vote. And so maybe Mookie does get in and then gets replaced for injury. That's the part that's a bummer because Mookie deserves to be an all-star, even though he can't play. And yeah, but other than that, yeah, I think Will Smith will end up there. I think Teoscar will end up there, and then we'll see on the pitching staff. But yeah, I don't really care. I'm gonna watch the All Star game or have the All Star game on TV while I'm doing whatever else I'm doing. I'm gonna watch the home run derby because I enjoy that. Since they changed the format, I don't care that there won't be any Dodgers in it. In the end, it really only matters when a guy retires and you're like, there's a 17-time All-Star. Okay, well, yeah, how many times did you deserve it? And with the fan voting, it only means so much, and you can have a logjam at one position. You look at guys who are in the Hall of Fame and only made 4 All-Star teams because there were 4 other guys at their position who were great in the league at the time. So it really doesn't mean that much in the long run.
Yeah, so we'll see Sunday. The rest of the team will get announced, and then obviously as injury replacements start filing in after that, or pitcher replacements for guys that are going to throw too close to the game. The Dodgers might get an extra arm in there that way. So we'll see what happens with All Stars. I guess real quick on the All Star front, I know you already don't like the fact that there's All Star jerseys, but did you see what the All Star jerseys look like?
I did, and yeah, I mean, if I was commissioner, hashtag Jeff for commissioner, one of my first changes would be to go back to having players wear their team uniforms in the All-Star game, wear the dumb league uniforms during the home run derby and stuff, but wear your own team's uniform in the game. So I don't really care that the uniforms are kind of ugly because I don't like the fact that they exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else on All Star or anything else before we head out of here?
No, I guess the only other thing that's not All-Star related, I'm interested to see what happens with the pitching staff, just because they have been overworked. The bullpen's been overworked. The Dodgers actually put JP Fireeisen on waivers, and he cleared waivers, and they outrighted him off the roster, so he's not on the 40-man roster anymore. Matt Gage is left-handed reliever who they got in this past offseason. But I think Michael Peterson, Alex Vesia, and who was the other one who has options available? There's one more, and I can't remember who it was. They don't have a lot of options. So I'm almost positive Michael Peterson will be back in the minor leagues tomorrow, and somebody will be called up to replace him. And maybe somebody else, somebody else has shoulder fatigue or something, because they're probably going to need some fresh arms.
Yeah, I saw our buddy Eric Steven had put out. There's a handful of guys that had threw 1 inning on Monday, a couple guys that threw later than that. Kyle Hurt being one of the guys that threw, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday, but he would need, I think, an IL stint to make his way back or something like that. Either way, there's some arms that are probably going to make their way to the Dodgers on Thursday and into the weekend. So,
yep.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and get notified when our episodes are ready or when we go live like we are right now. You can tell your friends, family, coworkers, anybody in your life that's a Dodger fan. Make sure to tell them about Locked On Dodgers. We're here for you every Monday through Friday for about 30 minutes. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing the biggest news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world. That's also where you can find the Locked On Dodgers postcast with Pete Fox after most Dodger games on the YouTube channel, Locked On Sports Los Angeles. You can go beyond the podcast, become a Locked On Dodgers insider at joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. You can get texts for any news updates, and then you can text us directly if you have any questions or comments. You can also find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter at SnyDog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us for any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or if you're at home, tell your smart device play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.